So we are here in this transcendental abode of Mayapur-dhama, mercifully manifest in this world. Continuing from our previous talk, what are the specialities of Mayapur and how can we serve Mayapur, enter Mayapur, reside in Mayapur, understand Mayapur, understand the glories of the personalities here in Mayapur, understand the contributions of these personalities. Also yesterday we spoke about the glories of Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and his unique contribution to our sampradaya. And today we'll also touch upon the glories of our beloved Srila Gurudev Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. We'll be going to see his samadhi in Koladvip, Navadvipa. Today is also Gopeshwar Mahadev's appearance day, Shivaratri, also the day that Parvati Devi received the merciful association of Lord Shiva after a long time of austerities, praying for his one-pointed shelter. And so it's a very auspicious day here. We are observing Shivaratri, which is a day of special worship and honor, where we fast from grains because Lord Shiva is coming from Mahavishnu, and on any incarnation of Vishnu day we don't take grains. Lord Shiva is described in the Brahma Samhita as the yogurt to Lord Vishnu's milk. That's the metaphor given. And so therefore we honor him, understanding he's the yogurt to Lord Vishnu's milk. So therefore we don't take grains like it's an appearance day of a Vishnu avatar. And this was a very special day to our Srila Gurudev. He had a very close connection with Lord Shiva as Gopeshwar Mahadev. So there are many things to discuss. And while discussing the glories of Srila Gurudev, it would be improper or incomplete without describing his special mood and desire to help us understand what does it mean to become a maidservant of Srimati Radhika. And Gurudev would say, even though not everyone may be qualified, if it is not described, then the tradition will be lost, or it will be mixed and contaminated by those who do not give the proper process and understanding. And so Srila Gurudev especially focused on giving his disciples the understanding of the glory of that opportunity given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he taught us the pranali, or the method, to enter into that realm of service. Our acharyas, especially our Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, one of the great modern founders in our lineage, he taught the importance of having utmost respect and regard for our worshipful deities. And his disciples also taught us how to be especially cautious around the aspiration even for the service of Srimati Radhika. They would say, Pujala Raga, Gaurav. You should worship the path of Rag with great respect. And this is a prerequisite for any endeavor to advance in that path. First, understand that it should be worshipped and honored, and is something very high, something that may take millions of lives to achieve, that is only granted upon our full eligibility for that service, that cannot be taken by force. But first, let's talk a little bit about Mayapur. So, as we talked about the other day, in Vrindavan, there are the different rasas, and of the primary 5 rasas of relationship with Krishna, 3 are most prominent in Vrindavan: the mood of friendship with Krishna, the mood of parental affection for Krishna, and the mood of madhurya, or conjugal love for Krishna. And within the mood of madhurya, or conjugal love, there are 4 different groups that help facilitate the experience of this rasa. There's the own group of Srimati Radhika called Swapaksha, there's the neutral group called Tatashta, there's the friendly group called Suhrit, and there's the opposing group called Vipaksha. And we heard how it's very difficult for Srimati Radhika to meet with Krishna. This is called Sudurlabha, and that is partially because of all these obstacles created by so many rasas, and Krishna is giving his prem to all different associates in Braj. But there are some places in Vrindavan or Braj-mandal that are protected and guarded just for the service of Krishna by Srimati Radhika, with Srimati Radhika, by her own group. And such a place is Sri Radha-kund, the liquid manifestation of Srimati Radhika's love for Krishna. And adjacent to that is Sri Shyamakund, with a pathway between. In the center is Ananga Manjari Sukada Kunj. This is the form of Nityananda Prabhu as a maidservant of Srimati Radhika, non-different in one sense from Janava Mata, his Shakti. And she is one of the chief maidservants of Srimati Radhika, who will be like a leader of many of the Guru Parampara. In our songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we will sing Shri Rupa Manjari, Shri Rasa Manjari, Ananga Manjari Ar. Especially in our lineage, we take shelter of Shri Rupa Manjari as the chief maidservant of Srimati Radhika, but also Ananga Manjari is very prominent there, and her place is in between Radha-kund and Shyamakund. But that Radha-kund, Shyamakund is a protected area where only Madhurya Rasa is present serving Krishna, but Madhurya Rasa only in the specific group of Srimati Radhika and the followers of Srimati Radhika. And that same Radha-kund manifests in Mayapur, in Antardvip, the inner pericarp of the lotus, the central part of the lotus. That same Radha-kund is the center of Mayapur. And from there, the effulgence of the love of Srimati Radhika for Krishna in that specific Madhurya aspect manifests throughout the 8 other islands of Navadvipa and throughout all of Gaura-mandala. So we went there yesterday to Radha-kund, Shyamakund. And we went to Govardhan, that's also there. That whole area of Chaitanya Mat established by Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada is called Brajapatan, which means a branch of Braj. Specifically there, like an embassy, to train prospective applicants, to train applicants who are aspiring for entrance into the service of Braj in the path of aspiring to be a maidservant of Srimati Radhika, because that is what is present in Radha-kund. That is called the branch office of Braj, the embassy of Braj. And while other rasas are available and worthy of the utmost honor and respect and regard, and are honored and respected and regarded to the highest extent, the prominent feature in the Rupanuga line is that Manjari mood. And those who are versed in this can see and understand that throughout our lineage, from the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the 6 Goswamis, in the other Goswamis, such as Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada's main associates. That mood is present. So we heard yesterday how from Vrindavan, Krishna went to Dwarka. And in Dwarka, the mood of opulence is prominent, but Radharani in one incarnation appeared there in Dwarka as Satyabhama, and Chandravali, her chief rival, appeared there in one incarnation as Rukmini. So in Dwarka, there were, in the mood of opulence, the queens serving Krishna. And there's many specificities around that. We won't go too deep into it because we're focusing on Mayapur. But one thing our Param Gurudev Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj said, which is quite controversial at the time. He said that in Dwarka, even though there is some form of madhurya, which means the conjugal love aspect towards God, the primary part of it is actually dasya, which is that one is the servant of God and inferior, therefore, to God. Not inferior, but junior, subordinate. It does not have the capacity to actually control the beloved as Srimati Radhika does in Braj. He said it's not pure madhurya. And it's also somewhat covered by the mood of opulence, as well as desires separate from one pointed ekantic bhakti to Krishna. Because of the opulence, there's the risk of becoming focused more on the opulence than focused on Krishna, as well as focused on, for example, each queen has 10 sons, daughter, family, palace, responsibilities, and their focus is even slightly divided from complete absorption in Krishna. Whereas Srimati Radhika and the Astasakis, the Manjaris, they don't have children, they don't have opulent palaces, although of course they do. It said the opulence in Braj is millions of times greater than the opulence of Vaikuntha. Even a particle of dust in Braj is a chintamani, fulfilling all desires. But it's not the focus. The opulence isn't the focus. But in Dwarka, there's the Chandravali party spirit and the Srimati Radhika in its incarnation, Satyabhama, Rukmini, and then many other queens. These are all Shakti manifestations. But Krishna himself said after Dwarka Lila that because the prem there, or the love there, is mixed with the mood of opulence, it does not fully satisfy my heart. And because the prem there is mixed with the mood of the servant to the master, it does not fully satisfy my heart. Ultimately, God is not looking for that kind of relationship with the souls. He's looking for a relationship of pure love that is not hampered. Hampered is actually a good word. Aishwarya Shitil Prem Nahi Mora Prita. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Mahaprabhu states that love inhibited by the mood of opulence does not fully satisfy me. So that is there in Dwarka. And we heard about the competition spirit between Satyabhama and Rukmini. So that is there. One of the specialities of Mayapur is there's no mixture. In Braj-mandal, there is Sakhi Stali, Chandravali's place. There's Chandra Sarovar, Chandravali's place. In Mayapur, there's no Sakhi Stali, Chandra Sarovar. We don't hear of it. Radha-kund, Shyam-kund, all Swapaksha group of Srimati Radhika. Very focused. So therefore, it's very special. In our line, we don't teach people to aspire to be the maidservants of Chandravali. Why not? It may be available somewhere else, but not in our Gaudiya line. And our Gaudiya line's headquarters is Mayapur. Radha-kund, Shyam-kund, established by Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada. And he said, I'm not establishing something new. Bhaktivinoda Thakur established the glories of Navadvipa, and he showed that actually Braj, Mandal, and Navadvipa are both present, almost like dimensions laid upon each other, and how certain places of Navadvipa are in Braj, and places of Braj are in Navadvipa. Because one time when Gurudev wasn't able to come to Navadvipa Parikrama after 60 years of doing it, he did Navadvipa Parikrama in Braj-mandala. And he took us around and showed this is this place, this is Koladweep, this is Ritudweep, and so forth. So Mayapur Navadvipa is very special. Mayapur specifically is Radha-kund. This is described as the garden or the forest of Srimati Radhika. Van can mean forest, but what is in a forest? Many flower gardens, many groves. So Mayapur is described to be Radha-kund, especially the forest or garden of Srimati Radhika. Then next we'll go to Godrum. This is the place of Lalita Saki. Champakhatta, the place of Champakalata Saki. All these different islands are all presided over by the 8 first manifestations of Srimati Radhika, her Kaya Vyuha expansions. So it's a very special place. Part of the glories of our Guru Varga is that they came in the line of Mahaprabhu to reveal this and to share this with the world. And therefore Mahaprabhu is known as the Karuna Avatar, the incarnation of mercy, and the incarnation of prema or divine love. Krishna is called Lila Purushottama. Purushottama means not an incarnation, the highest supreme being. Some incarnations are what we call avatars, incarnations. Some are Purushottama. Jagannath is Purushottama. He's the supreme being. He also appears as Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu appears as Jagannath, no difference. He's the Purushottama. Mahaprabhu is not an incarnation of Vishnu. Nityananda Prabhu is not an incarnation of Vishnu or Balaram. Vishnu is an incarnation of Balaram or Nityananda Prabhu. They are primary root avataris, the source. So, here in Mayapur, Mahaprabhu is present. If we go now to these pastime places, which we've been, one thing we described also yesterday morning is the sweetness of Bengal as a place where it was chosen to, in this current era of the universe, you could say, Bengal was chosen to be a home for Mayapur. Or you could say Mayapur was chosen and then the spirit of Bengal formed around it. It's hard to understand these things because we again say that the manifest Dham is an eternal, almost like projection of this eternal Dham, the unmanifest Dham. If you think of it like the Braj Dham spotlight shines on Braj Dham in this world, and the Navadvipa Dham spotlight from the unmanifest eternal realm beyond matter. So it's here. So maybe you could say the spirit of Mayapur trickles out, and the farther it goes out, the spirit, the ripple effect may adjust and be mixed with other things. But there's a specialty to this place. And it's very sweet. Yesterday we went to the place which is Gadadhar's home. Gadadhar Pandit is an incarnation of Srimati Radhika or a manifestation of Srimati Radhika. And then very nearby, walking distance, like one's close neighbor, is Advaitacharya's home. And then very nearby, walking distance a little farther, is Srivas Pandit's home. So all the Panchatattva, the 5 eternal truths, who are 5 aspects of Mahaprabhu, said understand that the Panchatattva are all aspects of Mahaprabhu. Advaya Gyan Padatattva. And they all live very close. And then Mahaprabhu's home was also very close. You see, from Braj to Dwarka, the next pastimes of Krishna manifest in Mayapur and Navadvipa. So it's a continuation. Chaitanya Charitamrita is a sequel to the Bhagavatam. Or you could say the Bhagavatam is a prologue for Mahaprabhu Leela. They're all eternally part and parcel. And when we get to the topic of Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev, we should also understand that Swami Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev are also complementary for our specific niche or current. For some they may say, no, you can exclude Srila Narayan Goswami Maharaj from Prabhupada's mission. You can do that, it's fine. They banned him. In 1994 he was officially banned from ISKCON. So he's been excluded. But you cannot exclude him from history. You cannot exclude him from his followers and disciples. You cannot exclude him from fact. And so it is a factual, historical record that he came as complementary to Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, that he was requested by Swami Prabhupada himself to offer him samadhi, which is a very undeniably sacred and intimate request. He could have asked Srila Bhakti Sridhar Maharaj, he could have asked his disciple Srila Gauravinda Maharaj to do it, who is a pure devotee. He had some other very qualified disciples, but he asked Srila Gurudev. And it's also a historical record that he asked Srila Gurudev to train his disciples, calling them. So, it's true, it's a historical fact. Sometimes, humility is a bitter pill to swallow, but it's a very invigorating, nutritious pill that improves our well-being. So Prabhupada said, I've brought so many people there untrained. They need your guidance. I'm going. My beloved is calling me. I must go. Please continue to guide them. And Srila Gurudev did since Swami Prabhupada's departure. Swami Prabhupada requested Gurudev to come to the West when he was preaching. But Gurudev said, I've been given the responsibilities by my Gurudev to maintain his mission at that time. Mathura and other temples were there in different parts of India. It was his responsibility. And life is such a thing that everyone's life is its own river. Sometimes the rivers come together, like we see Jamuna Ganga come together in some places, and sometimes they go apart. We may think, we'll all live together forever. But we do not control fate. And sometimes your river will go this way, and sometimes my river will go this way, and sometimes they'll meet back together. And some streams and tributaries will join together and go all the way to the ocean or the lotus feet of Krishna. There's no guarantee. But it is undeniable that Srila Gurudev endeavored with his utmost earnest, loving offering to Swami Prabhupada and our Guru Varga to help the fledgling devotees of the Western world understand the speciality of the mission of Mahaprabhu and enter into its more esoteric aspects in their proper bhajan practice, so that the speciality of the line was preserved. And again, we don't have time for fully fleshing out this topic, but even when Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada established the pure conception of how to enter into this line, the proper pranali or method to achieve the service of Srimati Radhika in a bona fide manner, many were opposed to him. Many in the caste system were opposed to him. Many in the Sahajiya line, what we call, were opposed to him. Some even tried to kill him. And if Gurudev had not preserved the conception of the proper process to understand and enter into the service of Srimati Radhika, then the enemies of the Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, Bhaktivinoda Thakur line coming from the Goswamis would try to monopolize that and bring everyone away from their Guru Parampara. And we're not criticizing or saying others are not bona fide, but what Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada gave, what Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave, what our Srila Gurudev gave, what Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada came and gave, that line is bona fide. And the process is bona fide. And Krishna says in the Gita and other scriptures, many have achieved me through this process I am giving. We should not think that no one has ever achieved liberation. Krishna says in scripture, and it's said in Bhagavatam, millions and millions of souls have achieved liberation. And of those millions and millions of souls, one may be a one-pointed devotee of Krishna in Braj. So that means how many tens and 20s and hundreds and billions of millions have achieved liberation over infinite time? But there's a proper process. So Gurudev really offered an important contribution to our Vaishnav society an eternal lineage. And that is undeniable, and that is continuing. So therefore we offer our pranam again and again, countless times, to our beloved Guru Pada Padma, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. We don't have to unravel the history and the controversy, why they had every little detail. But the point is that what Gurudev gave is very special and very rare, therefore people love to fight over ideology, and the basis of the quarrel was over ideology, philosophy.
The basis of the quarrel was
controlling the
yes.
current of the conception.
Yes.
Like, for example, one of the primary examples is the idea that the soul fell from the spiritual world. It was in the pastimes of Krishna, made some mistake, desired to compete with Krishna, this and that, fell. It's not there in the Bhagavatam, it's not there in the Gita, but one can interpret things in different ways, one can hear things in different ways. One guru may say something in a letter, may say something else in a public lecture, may say something else in a purport. Generally, it's considered a personal instruction. It's not as weighty as a purport that he wrote as a scripture for the masses. So anyhow, there's many controversies around this, and that was one of the reasons that they didn't accept Gurudev within their mission. There's always also politics and fear of being overshadowed, you could say. So there's so many things. But whatever it is, Gurudev's stream or river going to the lotus feet of Radha Krishna did not flow together and merge with the river of ISKCON. And that's also a historical record, fact. But we like to say we are adjacent, we are supplementary, we are humble, we are born on the wrong side of the tracks. We're not the rich, rich elder sister. But we're rich in spirit because our Gurudev was full of the wealth of the service of the lotus feet of Srimati Radhika. So Mayapur is very special, very, very special. But to understand that speciality, it's described by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gaur Amara Jai Sabastana Karolo Brahmana Range. We should go to those places of Mahaprabhu and hear the pastimes with like-minded associates, like-minded association who help us to understand the moods of these places. And so that's why I also want to speak a little bit about the conception of Srila Gurudev about how to actually obtain the service for Srimati Radhika, or even how to develop the aspiration for that. And it is a speciality of Srila Gurudev, and it is a speciality of our Sampradaya. It is very rare. Lord Chaitanya is glorified by Rupa Goswami with the verse, Anarpita Charim Chirat. This is Rupa Goswami's verse. He said it had not been given for incalculably long periods of time. Therefore, it means that if you look in our scriptures, the prominent rasas or means of relationship with Krishna that we're given are not the main focus of what Mahaprabhu is giving. For example, if you go to the market, you can buy various metals, various jewelry, various goods. And there may be a shopkeeper who sells many items that you can find in other shops that have always been available. But if you go again and again and say, do you have something that nobody else has? Is there something special that you only give? And they may say, well, I have something in a safe, in a vault, 10 stories down. We don't really talk about it so much. But it's available, but it's a very laborious process and it's very expensive. I can't just bring it up here and show it on the showcase. There's a procedure. If you want it, you have to apply. There has to be an approval period. We have to do a background check. So even to know about this is very rare, about this opportunity to be the direct maidservant of Srimati Radhika. It's a very rare thing. Anarpita chirin chirat. Gurudev said, Unata ujvala rasam svabhakti shriyam, which is the second line of this very important verse. That effulgent, spotless beauty of the service of Srimati Radhika and Krishna, that is the contribution of Mahaprabhu. Sakya ras, Vatsalya ras, these other rases were available. We can see different saints who taught different paths. We can see, for example, in the pastimes of Lord Ram, that the sages in the forest were aspiring to become gopis, the Danda Karanya rishis. And they received Gopal mantra, and by chanting Gopal mantra, they took birth in Braj in Krishna's pastimes and were able to participate in the rasa dance. Not all of them were manjaris. And even if some of them may have later become that, maybe they took birth in Mahaprabhu's time or after Mahaprabhu's time and were able to become that, without even the knowledge of it, how can you aspire for it? I challenge you. You can read the Upanishads and see where it tells you the method to become the maidservant of Srimati Radhika. It's very hidden. Maybe hinted at in places. Radharani is very special, very guarded by Krishna, very protected. This is another topic I wanted to mention. We look at one thing that is very noteworthy and honorable about Swami Prabhupada's establishment in ISKCON is there is great respect for Srimati Radhika, so much respect, and it's taught by a little bit of fear of approaching too closely. And things can go too far to one side or the other, but there's a lot of respect. They won't just chant her name without a mood of honor and respect. And this is also a theme I want to touch on in this talk. We should always be cautious to not try to separate Radharani from Krishna or Krishna from Radharani. And so if we're chanting Radhe, 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 understand that it's pleasing to Krishna. Chanting Krishna, Krishna is pleasing to Srimati Radhika. If we're serving Srimati Radhika, remind her of her relation with Krishna. In all the archan processes to Srimati Radhika, it's all meant to be inspiring her in the reflection on her relation and her experience with Krishna. So never divide Radharani from Krishna or Krishna from Radharani, and this can be done if we're not cautious. And then that one-pointedness can be lost, that mood of Radhavan, the force of Srimati Radhika coming from Mayapur, can go astray. We can end up outside the kunj and not be able to properly enter it. So the proper process is given, but that's one thing I want to touch upon. Ultimately, in our age, as taught by our Guru Varga, as taught by Mahaprabhu, the highest mantra for deliverance is the Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We should understand Radha Dasyam is present in the Mahamantra. And if you read the commentaries of our Goswamis, it's very clear that this is all rasa dance right there in the Mahamantra. The Mahamantra is so special that it can give you perfection in Sakya ras, Vatsalya ras, Dasya ras, Shanta ras, other rasas, even through Nama Bas into other things, through Nama Parad into other things. It can give you liberation, it can give you material opulence, it can give you the kingdom of heaven. It's a Siddha mantra. But we should not think that Radha Dasyam is not available through that Mahamantra. But one important note about, now we're going to speak for a few minutes about the pranali or the method in our line to properly advance towards that platform and opportunity to serve Srimati Radhika. Only chanting the name without developing love and attraction for the name through a mood of love and service and to please Krishna, then the power of that name will further you along the path to your own ulterior desires. It's very powerful, the name. And so part of what our line teaches you is how to very cautiously uproot different weeds of different desires that sprout in the heart during your course of practice. Especially Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Madhurya Kadambini describes this in great detail, and Raghvartma Chandrika describes this in great detail. And it's very important. A good gardener will care for the plants and then be very cautious to uproot the weeds that may poison or choke or take the nutrients from the flower that you're trying to cultivate. So that's very important to understand. So while we're chanting Mahamantra, we should understand what is the proper mood to develop under guidance. And that is one of the specialities of our Srila Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj. He really helped us set our mood, and set our intention, and set our goal. And this is very important. One of the most reoccurring themes of Srila Gurudev was, if you don't have a goal, how will you ever get where you are going? Because you're not even going anywhere. If you're not going anywhere, it means you don't have any kind of aspiration, any kind of goal, then all your chanting will lead you into different... Hare Krishna Bridget Dandava Pranam. Therefore, Gurudev would say again and again, know your goal, then you can understand which path will lead you there. So that's one of his specialities. In our line of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he would say, and this is one important thing about, again, knowing your goal. He would say, Radhika dasi jadi hoya biman shigrai milai tabo gokulakan. In Jivadharma, it talks about the processes of actually entering to this rasa. And he said, first you hear about it. This is a stage of hearing. We're hearing about it. It's important. If through the process of hearing regularly, attentively, which the Bhagavatam says is called Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna, regular hearing, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, continuously hearing, surrendering and serving and hearing, what will happen is, over time, your heart will gravitate towards something, naturally. Jai Priti Hare Krishna. It's a natural process. There'll be a gravitational pull. If you pour water into a land, all the water will end up collecting somewhere. Abhi 10 minute lag gaya, Priti, koi tension nahi? ठीक है. Naturally, the water will collect somewhere. So we talked about this the other day in Vrindavan, how hearing is like offering a tincture in your ear, a medicinal tincture. Drops of water of hearing. Shrinvata Swakata Krishna. Mahaprabhu said, the gardener must carefully take care of the garden, and that's the soul's individual's responsibility. And how do you do that? You water the seed that has been planted by Guru. Just last night I was reading, this is Gurudev's volume 89 in our series of Gurudev lectures from 2002. And he said, I have given you everything. Don't think there's anything I have not given you. But a gardener who plants the seed will tell you, you must water the seed. You must take some responsibility. And if you water that seed, you can't expect a fruit overnight. Cultivate the seed, follow the process. So the point here is that if you hear enough Harikatha, that's like water going in your ear. Eventually, it's going to settle and be together. That means your desire for your specific aspiration will accumulate. And then, along with the hearing process, by the chanting of the Mahamantra, in japa, in congregational chanting, along with our different bhajans, along with our different sadhanas, our different limbs of bhakti, sadhu sangha, nam kirtan, bhagavat shravan, dhamba, shraddhaya, murtir sevan. Gradually, by this process, then the heart will become clean. Chetodharpana marjanam. Mahaprabhu describes the consciousness to be like a mirror and reflects your desires, and then you have so many different forms. Sometimes you're a tiger, sometimes you're a fish, sometimes you're a cat, sometimes you're a mouse, sometimes you're a tree. Chetodharpana marjanam. This is the reflection of your desires. So by hearing Harikatha, gradually that Harikatha should be like water that can settle into a place and accumulate, and then when it has enough strength of force, of desire, and enough purity, then it will reflect. You will be able to see a reflection in the surface of that water, and that is your pure desire, your pure aspiration. And if that aspiration is genuine and very intense, full of ardent greed, lobha mai shraddha, with faith with greed, lobha mai shraddha, and then you see, in the reflection of that clear water of the pool or lake in my heart, may my heart be like, may there be a Radha-kund in my heart. In that pool, if I see the reflection, and I feel, I accept, from hearing comes the stage of acceptance. I accept in the core of my heart, in the pool of the lake of my heart, Radhika dasi jadi hoya biman. I am the maidservant of Srimati Radhika. And I know it, I accept it. Then very quickly this will bring us to the lotus feet of Radha Krishna.
Is this the chitta?
In the heart is sometimes described to be the chitta. And so cheto dharpana marjana means cleansing the mirror of the heart. Gurudev would say this is fixed. The seed is fixed. But we like to think of the seed as this material thing. My soul is a seed and it's a material thing. And I want to touch on this topic because I think it's very relevant and important. Think of the seed as a mood. And that's how, by association, the mood can transform. And so in some association, when you're generally in more clouded consciousness, at that stage, what's the use of thinking, I'm a cowherd boy, I'm a manjari, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a grasshopper, I'm a blade of grass, I'm this and that. People get lost because you haven't done the sadhana. Puja Laraga, this is very high. I have great respect for it. But there'll be an inclination. If you're always with devotees who are talking about the maid service of Srimati Radhika, and you're aspiring for Sakyaras, then that water of Harikatha may not be the most beneficial for you. And therefore you find a guru whose heart is realized in his service of Krishna in Sakyaras. And then that guru gives that water and that desire will manifest. And therefore this thing should not be artificially... they say, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. That's one famous saying. There's something else similar to that, but the idea is also don't cast your pearls before swine. But there's another one, but I can't think of it at the moment. But the idea is you should have proper respect for this even before trying to imitate. Otherwise, everything becomes cheap imitation. And a lot of that occurred after the time of Mahaprabhu, because this is such a phenomenal philosophy and idea. Naturally, everyone wants to rush into it. But the idea here is that if that is something that your heart gravitates towards, generally that's considered an indication. And Gurudev would say, if you're in this Gaudiya Sampradaya and you're attracted to this mood, that is generally considered an indication that that could be your rasa or your bhav, your mood. If you think of it in quantum physics terms, for example, people are always debating, is it a particle, is it a wave? What is the nature of the fundamental basis of reality? So if you think of the soul as possessing of a mood, what is that mood? What is that mood in relationship with God and an experience of pure love? And that note of your soul, you could say, that melody of your soul, what we call sanchari bhav, vyabhichari bhav, transitory emotions, that comes from the sthayi bhav, the permanent note of your soul, you could think of it as. And each one is individual. Therefore, each maidservant of Srimati Radhika has her own appearance, her own name, her own form, service, cloth, and so forth. It's a specific bhav. So if through hearing Harikatha, when you have the inclination towards that, through steady process, through steady practice, perhaps over lifetimes, who knows how long, many, many years, so much sadhana, if that desire manifests with real greed, then that can be taken as an indication, and then you learn to then continue forward in that process. Therefore it's said to go to a guru who says, this is your manjari name, this is your cloth, this is your group, this is your family. It's considered a profanity upon the sacredness of our tradition. Because in reality, you don't have that pure greed, you don't have the clarity of conception, you don't have the backing of your practice, you don't have purity of habit and character, you haven't followed yam, niyam, rules, prohibitions, things to do, things not to do. And so it's considered to be like a wild, an example from Krishna Lila would be like Duvida the gorilla trying to barge into the kunj. It's a Krishna Lila pastime. Duvida the gorilla trying to barge into the kunj and disturb the gopis and Krishna. So therefore there's a process, and that's all part of the Siddha Pranali. Some people, it's very rare, and this is given in Jaiva Dharma. Sannyasi Thakur, in the first chapter, it's shown how within 10 pages, all of a sudden it's like, you're a manjari of Srimati Radhika, this is your service. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in a great work, in a great epic offering in literature, oftentimes you have to indicate, the ending is in the beginning in some hidden way. But this personality was already a Paramahamsa through his practice in his Brahmavad tradition, already completely free of material desires and attachments, already a Paramahamsa sannyasi, which is the highest stage of sannyas, which is not something you wear, it's something you embody. And then by taking full shelter of his guru, who is a completely liberated soul, what to speak of Paramahamsa, and serving and surrendering there, then in due course, it was quickly revealed to him through his own qualification and meditation. And this is something that is realized by you. It is not artificially given. Otherwise, your father can say, here's $10 billion, here's the keys to the kingdom when you're a 6, 7-year-old. And what are you going to grow up into? A hedonistic prince who spoils his father's wealth and kingdom and pollutes and contaminates it. No training, no background, no practice, no rigor, no discipleship. There's an interesting story about discipleship. One time there was a Muslim king and he wanted his prince to have a good tutor. And so he got a tutor for the prince. He was a very qualified tutor, but a tutor compared to a king and a prince is a lower status. One day the tutor came to the king's palace to teach his son, the prince, but it had been raining outside and his feet and his shoes had all become covered in mud. And he was worried to enter into the king's palace because he would bring the mud into the royal carpets. Imagine that. So he took off his shoes, but his feet were also very muddy. Because normally you take off your shoes and then walk in, but his feet were very muddy. And so at that point, he was just in the spur of the moment, he asked the prince who was waiting for him, sitting on his royal cushions, waiting for his lower caste teacher to teach him something. Without thinking really, he just said, "Oh, can you bring me a little water so I can clean my feet before I walk on the carpet?" And as soon as he said it, he thought, "Oh no, I just asked the prince to serve me." And then the prince also is, he's just a teen, so he didn't really think twice about it. Normally you would have 10 servants around, but they were all otherwise occupied. And the tutor couldn't walk in the room, he didn't have water. And there weren't all the other servants, so the prince then, okay, yeah, what's the big deal? He got a bucket of water, he went and he washed the guru's feet and dried them. But the guru was feeling some trepidation in his heart. What did I do? So he gave the class. As the class was finished, the king called him to his quarters. And now he was really afraid. My severance package is my head. That's a kingly culture. So he went into the king's office of state, and the king was on his royal throne, and the tutor very humbly offered his respect. And the king asked him to sit down, and he was letting him sweat. You could see beads of perspiration on his forehead. And the king said, "Oh, you came from such a far distance. I know it was raining and muddy." Now he's starting to shake a bit. I, a menial caste tutor, teaching basic grammar to his son. Sometimes princes are very arrogant. They don't want to learn. It's a very tough job training a prince. I have a friend who worked in Saudi Arabia as a grammatical teacher of English. And he said it was the most difficult job he could imagine because he was surrounded by princes, all like sons of oil sheiks and things like that. And one time his superior told him, "Okay, you have 24 hours to leave the country." That was his severance package. One of the princes had complained. And he knew from all the other guys, like, there's no HR, there's no this or that. It's like, okay, I have 24 hours to leave the country. Packed up his bags and went back to America. This is the prince. Anyhow, so the king then, the tutor shaking. And he said, "And you asked my son, the prince, to wash your feet?" "Yes." He said, "Why didn't you have him massage them with oil? It was cold outside." He washed them, then you dried them, you sat down. He doesn't know anything about service. You should have massaged them with some warm oil. He is a prince, and he is my son, but to you, he is your disciple. And you have to teach him respect. And if you don't, how will he ever learn? Next time it happens, make him massage your feet with oil. No severance package today. So, Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada would say, puja la raga. If you want to enter that position, first worship it, honor it, understand the sacredness of it, and that you can't barge into the kunj like Dvivida the gorilla in Krishna's pastimes. Learn honor and respect. And I think this is somewhat relevant because from the West, we have a lot of history of conquering the world, a lot of history of colonialism. And so we don't want to bring a colonial mindset to Radha Dasyam, that we can barge into her kunj and acquire her service and elbow out her eternal associates.